Welcome to our podcast, Life Eventually.
And we are just two women
Working to figure it out eventually.
I am Dr. Alicia Yvette.
I am Melinda Yvette. Welcome back, everybody. We made it to episode 6. Yes, bring all the applause. This episode, we're going to be talking about what was going on in our lives during that time where, if you've listened to the introduction, there was a big gap between Alicia and I's friendship. I mean, we were never not friends. We just never saw each other. But we're going to break down that time frame because one of our listeners, actually one of Alicia's friends, said, "What were you guys doing?" Because we kind of just went right past all that and decided to say, hey, but this is who we are.
Yes. So, I mean, from 2008, when we talked about our first episode, this 13 years ago to now. And I believe before we started this podcast, we had only really met up one time, which we can talk about that. I'll start. Once I left high school, I stayed in Brockton for the summer. I worked. At the time, I had a job as a medical secretary. So I would float to different offices if their secretary was out. So it was really busy. It was a full-time job. It was a hard job. So I spent most of my time doing that, saving up for college, getting all my stuff together. And then in the fall, I moved to Connecticut to go to Trinity College. I lived there full-time. I worked jobs there. I was a chemistry major. My first 2 years, I did track, indoor and outdoor. I was a thrower. I was very involved in the campus. It's a very small college, but I was involved in the Black Women's Organization and a host of other events and so forth. And then in 2012, I finished up in college and I graduated. And about 3 days after I graduated, I moved to Atlanta to start graduate school. At the end of college, that was a hard time. It sounded like it was like really happy and achieved, but I actually really struggled with depression at that time a lot. It affected my studies, and I wasn't in the best relationship. I was with Junior's dad, so we moved out together, and it was as toxic as it could be on both ends. I think I see now that it wasn't just him, it was me too. I had Junior, and then I was in graduate school, and I didn't feel any support, so I left Atlanta, came back to Brockton, quit graduate school, and I felt like it was forced. I felt like my son's dad, we got into a fight, and he was like, "I'm taking our son." I was like, "No, you're not, and I'll quit school." So I left, and then when I came back, I was staying with his mom. So we were living there, no job, no place to stay. Well, he had a car, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And Junior was only a few months old. From there, it was just getting worse and worse, the relationship. So I moved out of his mom's house and moved in with my family, and his dad came too. We moved again. So it was just kind of going where we were allowed to. Yeah, like we just stayed with other people. And eventually I was just like, I broke up with him. And then that's close to when me and you reunited. But a lot of it was just before kids. It always felt like I had a lot of stress and heartache and depression. And then now that I have kids, I'm like, oh my God, I don't even have time to think about those same things. Like, I thought life was so hard before children. And, like I used to just be able to get up and just focus on myself. And I don't feel like I fully appreciated it.
Absolutely. I don't think anybody actually realizes how good we have it when we're just thinking about ourselves. And then when you have a child, you're like, wait a minute, now I have to think about how we can get through this, not just how I will get through this. So it's definitely something that people do not appreciate as much. When I left high school, I just kind of decided not to have friends with anybody, really. I kind of lost contact with everyone. I worked a lot. I had 2 jobs all the time. I was forced to go to community college. I begged my parents not to do it, but they were very adamant that I need to go to college. And I went, and I really just did not succeed in it. I just was not in the mental space to want to do it. I think high school had been so stressful for me that the idea of
more school,
and then being around more people just was not attractive to me at the time. but I went through some relationships, and I definitely was happy that I did go to community college, just because I did get to take radio production, and that was like really exciting for me, and I really loved it. It was so much fun for me. My professor always was like, "Oh my God, this is something that I can see you doing," but I just didn't know how that works, so I just never pursued it. But after college, like I said, I went only for a year, so that's what, 2009.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, I just continued having jobs here and there. I was at CVS for a while. I also was at Build-A-Bear, which was super fun. I know
Sounds like it.
people are always like, "Really, Build-A-Bear?" I was a manager at Build-A-Bear. I made it up there. I had a great time. I had so much fun, and all my Build-A-Bear people, they know I literally had too much fun. I really shouldn't have had as much fun as I did there. I was once the mascot. I mean, I sweated like no other, but it was so much fun. I don't care. It was fun. I worked at like Forever 21. I mean, I just bounced around. And then around 2010, that's when I met Dimitri again, because we were friends, but he at the time was in North Carolina living there. And then he reached out to me, and then I put the moves on him. You know, he had no choice at that point. I put the moves. I said, "Yeah, you're definitely going to be mine now. You're coming back home. Okay, well, this is it." We were really good friends, though, and then we started dating in 2010. And then I think a little bit after that, that's when we started a few years after that, right?
Yeah, it had to be around 2014.
Yeah.
Because I was in Connecticut up until 2012, and
Yeah.
then up until 2013, I was in Atlanta,
Okay.
and I came back in mid 2013, but then I like crawled into a hole.
Yeah. I in 2012 then got like my first like big real job that like was good for me. I loved, and I was working at Neighborhood Health Plan, and I worked myself up there, so I was really happy with being there. But then I got pregnant
Yeah.
in 2013.
I remember, I think I did see you on the train sometimes, on the commuter rail or
Yeah.
the red line.
That too. I was on both.
Yes, I think I did. We did actually see each other. I just
Yeah.
remembered that.
I was hiding my pregnancy from the world. Not that I did it on purpose. It's just I don't like people.
Yeah, in the business. Yeah.
I didn't really like the people I was around, like the supposed friends that I had. So I just kind of just stayed to myself and pulled the Kylie Jenner, and was like, "Yeah, I'm just going to be pregnant and not say anything." And I left Facebook and then came back and I had a baby. Yeah. But I liked that job so much. It was just too much for me, as far as like I'm a first time parent, and the idea of like seeing my child for 2 hours a day was just not my ideal situation, because I would have to be at work by a certain time. So that means I had to be up at like crack of dawn in order to take the commuter rail or take the red line in. And then I'm walking part of it too.
Yeah.
And I wasn't getting home until like after 6. So
It's
think
a
about
long
that.
day commuting to
Yeah.
Boston. I mean, I was right there too.
It just didn't make sense for me, because I'm like, I'm going to get home and then I'm going to spend 2 hours with you, and then I have to go to bed because I got to do this all over again. So I just didn't think that that was the way I wanted to be a parent, at least for my first child. I don't know. Maybe if I have more kids, I'd probably be like, you know what, screw it. It's worth it. I need to do it. And honestly, that's one of the biggest regrets I have, is leaving that job, because I really loved it and it was good for me. But the whole idea of being a first-time parent and not seeing my child was just so not how I expected being a parent for the first time. So I just left that job after having Sophia, which would have brought me towards the end of 2014.
Yeah, because she's a year younger than Junior.
Yeah, she's August of 2014.
Yeah, so I was out here with no job, no place to stay, no car,
Yeah.
crappy boyfriend who proposed to me just because he thought I was leaving him.
Wow.
from there, I just started getting more and more upset. Like, I already had left graduate school. I feel like I never forgave him for that. So I started talking to Cliff. There was a little bit of scandal. Some people felt like it was too quick, or that maybe, oh, no, there's no way that they weren't talking before I left his dad, which I know what I did, and there was no overlap. And I was over it. I was broken up with his dad in my mind long before it happened. It was just
But isn't that true for women? You break up with them, like you've already checked out in your mind before you actually break up.
long before.
Yeah.
I mean, I was so over it, and I just wanted to move on so badly. And I think once I found out that Cliff was interested and was just waiting on me, I was like, oh, okay, I gotta go. Like, 'cause I do feel like one of the things that I did that was unfair is my son's dad. I would expect him to be more like Cliff, because I dated Cliff in high school for 3.5 years. And then we broke up for 4 years, and I had my son. And a lot of that time I did try to, like, make him try to be consistent, or, I, like, wanted him to go to school and stuff, because he went to art school and didn't make it. And I just knew there was potential there, so I was like, just do it like this way. And it was like the whole time me and Cliff weren't together. He graduated college. He worked the job the whole time. He had his own car. He helped his family out, like, doing things that I was trying to force someone else to do.
Yeah.
So once I was like, if I could have the person I'm trying to make him into, like, that's better even for him. Like, for at the time he was probably like pissed, but I think in the end he could see that we just weren't working. We do have a good co-parenting relationship now, which I'm thankful for, and my son has a sister on that side. But when I started grad school, I told myself I cannot pass graduate school if I'm with this guy. Like, I will fail again, and I will have to quit again, and I'm not doing that. Either I'm going to go get my PhD, or I'm going to have a family with my son's dad and have that one perfect unit married family that, he was telling me I was going to ruin if I left. Like, he would be like, oh, you're taking away stability and a two-parent home from your kid. And I'm like, that's a totally selfish thing to say. Like, we weren't working. Like, I wasn't trying to take anything away from my child. I was trying to break up an unhappy relationship on both ends. People were mad, and I worried about how Cliff's family was going to feel receiving me after 4 years and another, I come back with another person's child, like, and then there was, I worried that they would think that, oh, I'm just going to run back to the baby dad. Like, now that I have a kid, like, he's always going to have pull, and I'll just run back. But I think, especially in the beginning, he didn't see Junior that much. So I was able to tell his parents, like, he hasn't seen his kid in 2 weeks. I don't talk to him. And they're like, okay, so some people had to say stuff. Like, there was some friends who were not happy that we were back together. They're like, you crazy, she hurt you. And I was just like, I wouldn't come back unless I knew I wanted things to be different. Like, I wouldn't waste his time.
Yeah. I mean, during my time too, like, I moved out on my own directly, like, pretty much right after high school. I got my car in 2010 by myself, and I was really proud of that. And I had some relationships that sucked, of course. I was dating a guy that I met at college, and it was like one of those type of guys that you're like, there's no effing way that I pulled him. Yeah. Because he was just...
Those be the worst ones.
A beautiful specimen.
Yeah. Those be the worst relationships.
To a lot of people. But, I mean, he was not ugly, obviously. But, like, he was, like, the talk of the town pretty much in the college. So I was kind of, like, overwhelmed that he liked me. And, like, he showed me new things that, I guess it was, like, my first, like, grown relationship. Because we were, like, out on dates, like, in Boston, and, like, he was showing me places and doing just really nice things. So I was really happy with that. And then we broke up. And, of course, his reasoning was, you're too focused on me. I need you to focus on you.
Did you a favor, though?
Right? I'm like, thanks. Gotta go.
Yeah, anyway, it still hurts because you don't believe it when they tell you that.
It hurt. It freaking hurt. But that is probably one of the best things that happened, too. Even so, like, I had my own place at that point. After he broke up with me, I had my own place. I had my own car. And he was still living at his mother's house. So take that. Take that. Take that. But, yeah, I mean, afterwards, I started talking to Dimitri, and that was always really stressful for me when we were talking, because we were talking on the phone for a while. And I was just really nervous because we were really good friends in high school. And I was worried that, like when you are talking to somebody on the phone, you have like that different relationship, and then you see that person in person, and then you're like,
Yes.
I don't know if this is what I wanted for real. But we have a connection, but it's just the in person didn't match up.
Yeah.
So that's what I was worried about a lot of the time. So I was freaking out when he moved back. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to see him. And it's not that I was scared to see him. It was just like I was more scared to see if this was going to be real or not. Or was he going to see me and be like, dude, that's just my friend. Like, that's weird. Like, what was I doing these couple of months talking to her? I can still remember everything I was wearing that day and everything. It's like I was so stressed out. And I was so happy that he saw me as more than just his friend. It definitely was a little strange at first, but it was like the best thing that happened for me, because after being with him, there was like a different kind of stability that came around with it. And I had started working at a job not too long before he came around, called JRC. And that job sucked.
I know people who've worked there. It sucked.
It's
not ideal.
So,
they just paid a little bit better than other jobs in the area at the time, but they don't tell you all the job hazards. Yep. And you can get hurt. You can emotional things that you go through while you're there. It's just crazy.
And so, for context, JRC is a place where they work with mentally disabled people and also behavioral challenged children. So there's residential homes, and they have the actual school that is specific for them. So you could work either within the school, or you can work as a mental health assistant in the school or in the residential homes. And I used to work in the residential homes. And, there was a lot of great kids that were in there. Yes, they had their issues, but there was a lot of great kids that I learned and, became friends with. But I also got really hurt there. Mm-hmm. I've been kicked in the back. I was bit on my back. I was headbutted.
Oh, my goodness.
That's the one that took me out pretty much. I got headbutted, and I had a nose contusion, a really bad concussion. I had some short-term memory loss for a few months that, was consistent. And
did they compensate you?
No. I mean, you you don't really get nothing.
That's wild.
So it was not a good time for me. But Dimitri was there for me from that time when I was there. I mean, I used to cry calling him when he lived in North Carolina, crying like, I have to go to this house, and I know when I go to this house, it's not good. I'm going to be hurt. So they never put enough staff members here. I mean, I've gone through some really horror stories at this place. I was once in a home where students basically broke the cameras and unplugged the phones, and ran around trying to shank me.
Oh my goodness.
And that happened for hours. So I was literally running through a 3-story home, running away the best I could to get away from these students that, for whatever reason, just decided to target me. And you want to know what I did?
What'd you do?
I opened a door, and that's why I was targeted.
Because you opened the door?
Yeah, I opened the front door to let one of the students in that lived there.
That's wild.
It was not a fun environment. But Dimitri was just really always there for me. He took care of me after that. I just was really I was bedridden for a lot of it. My face was just messed up because I got hit directly in between my nose. I'm surprised I didn't break anything. I was super bruised, and I just was not in a good headspace. So he took care of me. So that was really great. And that showed a lot to me that he cared, because he really was there all the time for me. Even to this day, I don't really remember driving myself to the hospital. I don't remember some of the phone calls I made. So it was a big deal in my life. So anyway.
I'm glad you're out of that job.
Yeah.
And I think that pretty much brings us, I think you were still working, you're after this job, after that job, but then working in Boston is when, I don't know if we saw each other on the train and we were like, hey, like we hit each other up afterwards and we were like, let's link up.
Yeah.
But you came over when I was living at my foster mother's house. I think I just started graduate school. I think it was 2014.
So was I...
And I think it might have been my son's birthday or something.
I think it was after Sophia because I wasn't pregnant when I saw you.
Yeah, it was after Sophia, yes.
Yeah, so
she was born. She was home with Dimitri.
Yeah. And
I think you brought over some Malibu and I had some cookie dough and tried to make cookies.
Oh, my God. First of all, let's just talk about that Malibu. I love me some Malibu. And it's like a guilty pleasure. I just love Malibu. It's a problem.
I think we had pineapple juice too. So I think we just had Malibu and pineapple juice.
Yep,
And we were
a little bit
off.
of cranberry in that bad boy, and you're good to go. And I had came over.
And you were hungry.
I was like, yo, I want them cookies though.
I was like, all right, bet. I'm going to bake them cookies right now. And then the timer went off, and I looked in, and I was like, oh, they're still a little juicy. Let me put them in for a few minutes. And Melinda was like, no, they're going to burn. I was like, no, I got this.
Yeah, no. And then she was chit-chatting. We're laughing. We're talking. And those poor cookies. R.I.P. R.I.P.
I burnt them.
She was literally just chit-chatting. And all I kept thinking is, this is going to be the end of these poor cookies. How are they going to make it out of that oven?
I was like, I got it. Don't worry.
And then she pulls these cookies out.
They were dark brown.
I
mean, we just had alcohol, full stomach of alcohol with no food.
I was so sad. I've never been more sad. I was just like, girl, but I told you, take them out. She's like, no, but just a few more minutes.
I was like, I like the brown edges.
Yep.
I was like, they're going to be too soft.
Instant failure.
Yes. And then Melinda didn't talk to me for 6 years after that.
Yeah. I mean, that was a serious offense. I mean, anybody in their right mind would say, yep, she's not worthy. She's got to be on timeout for a while.
And I messaged her and I was like, I'll buy more cookies. You can cook them. I'll come to you. You could do the cookies. And then I didn't hear from her until I think it was only a few months ago.
Yeah, but it wasn't really any hard feelings. We just, I don't know.
Got busy again.
Life started happening, and I just had a baby. So,
I just started graduate school.
Yeah, there was a lot going on.
Time.
Yeah, we had a lot going on. I do remember you reaching out, though, saying, like, okay, you can make the cookies this time. And I'm like, yeah, this time they'll actually be good.
And we still haven't made cookies yet.
I definitely need to make cookies with you again so then we can actually fix that poor memory and put a new memory there that actually is with good, soft, slightly crispy cookies.
Yes, my cookies are way better anyway, so
we'll have to see.
Maybe we can have a cookie competition.
Absolutely. I'm with it.
Yes. And then I think that's pretty much it. Like, I mean, and then after we had the cookies, I was in graduate school for 5 years with Cliff. I think 2 years later, I got engaged and bought a house a month later with Cliff, which to me was like, okay, the house is bigger than the engagement because it's like, engagement, it's like I take off the ring, like, okay, we're not getting married anymore. But a house, I'm like, we'd have to sell this house. I figure who's going to live here, how we're going to figure things out. So I was like, we're married.
You guys are glued.
Yeah. And then he stuck out 4 years of graduate school after that with me. We definitely had our ups and downs. And then I graduated.
Yeah.
Now we're here. I got time to do podcasts and have a regular job.
Yeah. So for me, after having Sophia, I had a lot of issues with depression, as we've talked about. I could not hold a job to save my life. Like,
it's hard for anyone.
I was literally at jobs for like less than 6 months every time. 6 months, 6 years.
How do you sleep? You know, like it's impossible.
It was really tough. So I had a job at a hospital. I also worked at an eye place. What else did I do? I had a lot of like empty space in between. I was just being a mom and it was tough. So a lot of the stress was on Dimitri, paying for all the bills. And I felt really bad because I had been such a person that always had a job and I was very consistent. And then suddenly I had my child and...
She was the job.
Yeah, but I
The
couldn't.
most important one.
I couldn't like bring any money in, and I just felt terrible for putting all of that pressure on to Dimitri. And after that, I started in 2017 is when I became a school bus driver. Dimitri and I both work at the same company, but we just work in different towns. But he is working in the garage, and I'm an actual bus driver. So I drive and I have a good time doing that. And I think it was like a happy medium for me because I don't like people at that time. Like I just couldn't deal because of my depression. And being a bus driver, it's almost like you're your own boss because you're not having to sit in a cubicle around other people, and you're not having to have to talk to anybody that you work
not
with.
long conversations.
Yeah, you're seeing them when you clock in and when you clock out. So you're not having to really deal with other humans. And I've always had a love for children. So, I mean, I worked at Build-A-Bear. So working at a school, like working for the schools was a no-brainer. I'm like, I can tolerate little humans, you know?
Just not the big ones.
Yeah, the big ones drive me nuts. So granted, the little ones drive me nuts
and then
too,
you
but
get
they're
the
more
gap
fun.
in the day. You get the middle of the day to be with your daughter. It's you know.
So it definitely worked out for me because then I'm not pushing myself too much because I'm only working a couple hours in the morning and a couple hours in the afternoon. And as you said, I'm able to still be home and be a parent to Sophia. And now, even now, like if something happens in school, I'm available during the day to get her or, you know, be there for her or be a part of any of the school activities that she's doing. So that really makes me happy. I mean, I do want to eventually get like a career going, which hopefully this podcast will definitely do for us because I genuinely love this. Like this is something that I've genuinely wanted to do in life. I was even told in elementary school, like, oh my God, your voice.
Your radio voice.
Yes, you have a radio voice. And I'm like, thanks. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with that. And then, you know, I was in high school. I was part of TV production when I was in Massachusetts. And then I also had lived in Arizona for a short time, and I was in their TV production. And then college, I did the radio production. So it's just something that has been nagging me to do it. And thankfully, because we reunited, and I would never have known that this was something that you also wanted to do. And look at how fast it's already progressed.
5
I'm
episodes.
excited. Yeah.
And I wanted to do it because I had commented on LinkedIn on a post that was a podcast, and they were asking for women in science topics. And I wrote the impact of the choice to have or not have children, and how does that impact women's careers in science? And they were like, hey, would you mind being a host? And I was like, okay. I didn't know what I was doing. But after that, you know, the person who hosted it's STEM podcast or like Women in Science or Wisest Women podcast. And I know they've changed the name a couple of times, so I want to make sure I give them the shout out. But Dr. Risha Chandra, she was really nice, and she really encouraged me. And actually, we had our own chat where I went into my life story. And then I also won the 3-minute thesis competition for 3rd place, and I got featured in their podcast. So after like getting a little bit of juice, I was like, you know, I have a lot to say. I think it would be really interesting if eventually I started my own. And I mean, that was like the end of the thought process. Like, eventually I'll do it. And then when you hit me up, I was like, why not? Like, I love turning words into actions and not just talk about it, but be about it. So we just started taking those first steps, and
it was fast.
Yeah.
When I tell you fast, like
that's how I move usually.
We had a short conversation on Snapchat, and then she was like, do you have time right now? I was like, excuse me? Like, I don't want to, impose. I don't want to be like taking your dream or anything, your thought of doing this and, including myself in it. But she was like, no, let's see what happens.
I mean, neither one of us alone was doing it.
Yeah.
It's, it's not like, oh, I'm already doing it and you're trying to like take it over. It's like, no, neither one of us have done anything yet. It's like, hey, if we can have something together, nothing separately. To me, it made more sense to get it done and get started and just go for it. That's typically how I do things, because the way my brain works, I will think about something and want to do it. And if I don't start getting the ball rolling, that thought will just sit there and I'll just be onto something else, especially where I do so much. And sometimes it's hard to get all my attention and focus together. But I think it's really worth it and it's paying off.
Yeah, I think it's been a really fun experience. We've learned a lot so far already, and we're basically self-taught now because we had a little bit of help from your friend.
Anthony is the one who helped us with the audio
Anthony.
the first
Yes.
time. He helped us with our
Sorry.
first episode, but he gave us a lot of information on how to come up with music for our song. For the beginning song, and then also just a lot of tips for us. And so we thanked him, but he made sure we had to figure out our own stuff after that.
Yeah. So, that was good, though, because we wanted to know how to do it ourselves anyway. Like, I genuinely want to learn how to edit and do things on my own so that we're not having to be dependent on anybody. And I just love the idea of having my own thing that I'm learning on my own and that I'm perfecting as time goes on. And then I can put that as a notch in my belt.
Yes.
You know?
And I love doing that too. Like a lot of people sometimes want to do something and they don't act on it. They don't put the work and energy it takes to make something happen and to then improve it or to stay consistent. So, my thing is like slow and steady wins the race. So I'm like consistency over a long time. I think we're going to get really far.
Yeah. So that's pretty much where we were during that time.
Yeah. And I'd like to mention some progressions that we have. Melinda and I would like to start spotlighting local businesses and artists on our show. So if anyone is interested and we can talk and work out an arrangement, we'd love to interview anyone who is a self-business owner or just has a real talent that they're also trying to grow, just like we're trying to grow podcasting.
You're trying to get it off the ground. And we can either do like an interview or we can always do like a short little commercial with your information and put it within the podcast.
Yeah, so just DM us and we'll definitely work with you. If you have any ideas for future episodes, thanks again, Darion. Hopefully we will be hosting you soon for our own episode because you have been a wonderful source of feedback and ideas for us, and we cannot thank you enough. And the last thing, we would like to try something new with the comments on our posts. So
on Instagram, we want to be able to see what our audience is doing. Like, have you been listening to every single episode? Are you still trying to get into listening to it, like you just haven't found the time yet? Or have you only listened to a couple, but you're a little behind? So what we want to do is have these emojis that will tell us that. So if you haven't gotten around to actually listening, but you want to, obviously, put an egg emoji. If you've listened to a few of our episodes, not all of them, put a caterpillar. And if you are our day one A1 and you've listened to every single episode, leave a butterfly. I'm sure you can see the progression on that. So an egg will just resemble a little cocoon.
Yes, you're about to click that play button.
Yep, your little cocoon in the egg. And then you're going to be a caterpillar. And then you're going to listen to every single episode we put out. And you're going to be a beautiful butterfly. So that's what we want to see from you guys. Please interact with us. We want to see you.
Yes, and again, let us know if there's anything you want to hear or if there's a topic you'd like to guest host with us, if you're a business owner, if you're an artist, anything. We are looking to keep creating content which requires help from the audience. So with that, life comes together eventually. Thanks for listening. Tune in with us for our next episode.
Please follow us on Spotify, Apple Music, and Anchor FM. And we're also on Instagram and YouTube, which can be found in the description links.
Make sure you comment and let us know what you want to hear in future episodes.